All right, we all just need to calm down a little bit after we've had ourselves that insane comeback from Creator. And now we move on to the world bracket here to find 2 more players moving through to Gamers 8 here at Gamers Without Borders. Joining me for the analysis, drum roll please, it's Wardy as well as Pig. Pig's looking very bright. What's that? No, it's normal Pig. It's normal Pig. So, gentlemen, we're changing gears a little bit here as we have that world bracket on the way. I'm wondering if we're looking at the bracket first or if we're actually just going into the verses. I can't remember, but it is going to be the Zerg versus Zerg to start things off regardless. It will be Cham going up against Lambo. And this is an interesting one for me, Pig, because it's not a fixture you see too much, I suppose, on the world stage, considering they come from 2 very, very different regions as a whole. But I do feel like it's relatively evenly matched between the 2, considering how Cham has kind of been on the rise over in LATAM.
You know, it's funny because I think a lot of people would think Lambo comes in as a favorite simply because he's, you know, so well known in the scene. Yeah. But yeah, when you look at the stats between them, it's quite evenly matched, with Cham actually having an advantage in their head-to-head. It's a clash of styles, you know, American, whether that be Latin American, North American, ZVZ is weird. Southeast Asia and Oceania almost falls into the same category. It's a different style of Zerg versus Zerg, and Lambo will no doubt come in with a lot of precautions and safety in mind, because Cham has a lot of variety to his builds. He knows how to be incredibly greedy, which of course supercharges his timing attacks when they do eventuate, because he's cut some corners to get there. Yeah. And as a result, Lambo can't just be playing completely standard. He's really got to scout very hard. Maybe.
Wardy, your thoughts coming into this one?
Yeah, I mean, Cham's dangerous, right? We saw that at Katowice. He had a great run when maybe not a lot of people had him penned, you know, to go that far along.
Beat
like
Scarlet.
ZVZ, man, like I always feel as though with ZVZ, you can absolutely see anybody come out and take it. And Lambo, yeah, very smart, very good. He has to be on point because you know Cham is, like Pig says, just creative. I think that's what it's going to come down to. Cham's going to be the creative one. He's going to be the aggressive one for the most part. And it's kind of down to Lambo to identify those timings, figure them out, and just safely get through to a later stage where he should still generally be the favorite. But like I say, don't kind of count Cham out even in a longer game.
Pig, you look like you want to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating as well because Alaza's waiting. So it's like we're going to see, no matter what, ZVZ into a ZVZ. And Alaza's great friends with Lambo. So when those 2 play, it gets weird. They both play like against the expectation of each other. So they both kind of almost swap. It feels like when those 2 play, it's like they're cosplaying as each other. Like Lambo's doing these Alaza builds that he normally would say are silly, but because you know, Alaza doesn't expect them, they kind of work. Either way it works, though. I'll be excited. And personally, as a bit of a fan of Cham, you know, seeing him rise up in one of the lesser known regions, Mexico, it's really cool to see him evolve as a player, and I'd love to see him take this next step.
Generally, when I come to a Zerg versus Zerg like this, I oftentimes, when I'm not as familiar with how the 2 players match up against one another, Wardy, I oftentimes look to okay, how do those 2 players match up against the likes of your Reynas, your Serals, and things like that? And when it comes to records, Cham, it's not that easy for him whatsoever when it matches up against those kinds of names. But Lambo's able to put up a little bit more of a fight in that regard. So, as Pig said, I think a lot of people would look at this and give Lambo kind of that favorite edge here, but could go either way.
Well, the history is definitely there for Lambo, right? And, you know, the expectations we have on Lambo is because he's performed better than Cham has previously, right? It's only very recently, probably at this Katowice, where Cham really popped off in the last year, where he did very well in the regionals. He won Latin America finally, right? So, yeah, the growth of Cham is new. So if you look at all the stats and stuff, yeah, it probably does point towards Lambo. But that's why Cham is dangerous, because he absolutely is good enough. We've seen that over the last few months. That recent rise from him means that not everyone's quite even sure how good he is. So you've got to go into this with a lot of respect as Lambo, and just kind of be that little bit cautious, that little bit careful.
All right, well, everybody out there, thank you very much, guys. Let's go on a journey through time and space and Zerg versus Zerg together. It's a best of 3 elimination or going on to a qualification match against Alaza here for the Zerg versus Zerg.
Thank you very much, Kalaris. I think that was an excellent impression of what Zerg versus Zerg is usually like. My name is Loco. I'm joined here by Demu. Demu, what do you feel about this series?
I think this is a cool one because, like, on paper or in my head, I really thought Lambo was a massive favorite against Cham, but after looking at it, and Pig really kind of riled that up in my head, I was like, wait a minute, Cham's got an edge over Lambo. And I looked at it, yeah, he does. Granted, it's quite a few games here, there. They haven't played super damn often. They're from completely different regions. Yeah, you can definitely say that Cham kind of, well, did better than expected. And even at his recent league or region, he actually dethroned Special after umpteen years of him being the best player over there. So yeah, if there was a time to do it, this is absolutely it for Cham, because Lambo, he's been looking like there's a few kinks in the armor, if you will.
Yeah, no, for sure. So here we go. Game number 1 in this series. We find ourselves on the map of Royal Blood. Spawning right here in the bottom left-hand corner. From Mexico, we have Cham.
And spawning over in the top right, representing Team Shopify Rebellion, it is Lambo.
The winner of this particular series will go up against Elaser. So this is going to be a best of 3. The next match, well, the winner will go up against Elaser. That's going to be a qualification match, and that will be a best of 5. Now, it's a ZVZ. This is one of those matchups that can quite literally be over within a couple of minutes, right? This goes for most matchups in StarCraft 2, but StarCraft 2's ZVZ is literally incredibly explosive. It's very easy to accidentally mess up, especially when there's a little bit of ping. It can be easy to accidentally miscontrol your Links and Banes. Both players, though, still opting to go for a hatchery first, which, of course, is the standard in this matchup. But everything can feel a little scary, right? Whenever you go for a hatchery first and your opponent already has Lings out, well, the game can be over fast.
It definitely can. Like, Cham doesn't super strike me as a Ling Bane. I'm going to do all the cheeky shenanigans early on. Definitely comes across as a bit of a roach guy to me. Maybe that's because he uses roaches in pretty much every matchup, even the ones that you kind of don't see that often anymore. He's one of the guys that really still holds a flame to the roach. But Lambo, he's also one of these guys that, upon his rise to... I want to say dominance, but as he was rising in Europe, he was one of the guys that was managing to take on people like Serral. And it was always with these cheeky ZVZ builds, like being on 2 bases, having 33 drones, doing a roach timing, a roach highway kind of thing. He's got it all. And when it comes down to a really solid macro game, I think he absolutely can go more than toe-to-toe with Cham, but Cham is also the kind of guy that will cut every corner known to man, so you can't just let him get away with anything that he wants to.
Yeah, and there are quite a few corners you can cut in this matchup, right? We'll have to see exactly what these players spent their gas on most notably. Link speed starts up right away for Lambo. He pulls a drone out of gas. The same has happened on the other side of the map, but Cham did not pull a drone out of gas. When it comes to the mirror matchups, those details, they really do matter, right? It definitely determines who's going to be able to get higher tier units and when, and who's going to be getting more economy and therefore eventually more units. Generally speaking, I think what Lambo is doing here is considered to be the standard, pulling 1 drone off and then going for a 3rd hatchery is the norm. That being said, we don't see a 3rd hatchery just yet here from the German.
No, we don't. Is Cham starting his up far earlier? I think he's gone for a fairly orthodox timing. Normally around like 3 minutes is by around the time that you normally get that going. And even though I thought Cham, more the roach guy in my mind, he is the one that's opting for the Baneling Nest earlier, the 3rd hatch, and Lambo sticking. Like, look at his mineral count here, Logan.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money that he has available. A bit of gas as well to utilize if he does so please. And that's a lot of Lings booted up here without a 3rd.
Yeah, it's without a 3rd and without a Baneling Nest, which confuses me a little bit, because if you want to go for a Link Flood, you actually sort of need the 3rd hatchery in order to, well, produce non-stop Links, right? Like, you can't actually produce enough larvae out of 2 bases to make non-stop Zerglings here. So the 3rd does start up, but he's had money in the bank to get that one for a little while. Maybe a bit of a misread right there from our German Zerg. That being said, though, he's got a ton of Lings out. He needs to almost, well, force the cancel here on the opponent's 3rd base in order to justify this. No Banelings available, though, for the player in blue. Cham is already finishing up a couple of his own.
Yeah, I mean, Lambo's getting quite a bit of damage done here. Cham, with these emergency Banelings, did do a good job of just buying time for them. Just little Zergling skirmishes. Ooh. He's actually got 2 Banelings in the main base. They could be really damaging for Lambo. So far, Lambo also opting for +1 carapace early on. He's hoping this is just going to be a long hatchery tech game.
This is the oldest trick in the book, man. Hiding Zerglings in your opponent's main base and then blowing up.
No!
What? He just got the larva. He could have had so much there, but he ended up just killing the larva. Okay, he also got the kill on the third. In the meantime, though, Lambo, I mean, he just managed to survive by the skin of his teeth. He got Zerglings in. He did deal a bit of damage. He also blows up a couple of Banes, losing the third base. Okay, well, there's a lot of chaos here already. I think Lambo's pretty happy about the fact that he didn't lose all the drones in the main, but Cham, he must be pretty upset with himself. Those drones, they should have all gone down.
At first, I was looking at it, right? That first Baneling hit like, what, a good 8-10 drones there or something? And the second Baneling just kind of, upon being able to connect, he was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a queen here, and just goes and shoots the queen. That was a massive blunder by Cham, because that's the kind of thing that could have really cemented him having a massive lead in this game. Now I'm kind of worried for him, because that +1 carapace will mean that Lings are a lot better, but he does have his third up and running. He kept it alive. He's also ahead in workers, and I think he got a pretty decent scout of what's actually going on here. So he is pumping out a lot of roaches.
Okay, so let's see exactly what the plan is going to be right here for Cham. It's very important he stops droning right now, though. He goes Lair, he goes Evo Chamber, he goes second gas here as well in the natural. Yeah, he needs to stop droning really quickly. Maybe he assumes that this is a quick Lair or something along those lines, although he did get a little bit of vision of that too. Cham even going for a move out right now? That's, well, the opposite of what he should be doing. There's a large Zerg army currently hidden in the natural of Lambo, and Cham doesn't know about it. The +1 carapace, it obviously benefits every unit that Lambo has. Okay, these roaches, they need to go back home. That's super important. I
mean, not only do they need to get back home, he needs to stop producing drones, man. I mean, yeah. Lambo did a really good job of keeping those units out of range here, just so they aren't spotted by any Lings that turn up at that front door. But 7 roaches. Cham is playing as blind as he possibly can. Now he knows there's a massive army. And what's he going to do on his side of the map?
He could have probably checked the drone count out at the third base a couple times already to get a bit of vision there to roughly figure out what he's playing against. 58 drones versus 32. If there is a world where Cham holds on, he can lose about half of his worker to still be okay, but it means that he just spent so much time just now on making workers, and they're not really going to help you out in the battle. Look at that massive army from Lambo getting across the map. Banelings on the right side of the screen get decent detonations, but the +1 armor is fantastic at keeping them alive.
It certainly is. And I mean, Cham, while he's rich behind all this, army supplies are not close whatsoever. Cham caught with his pants super down here. And Lambo, look at that. He's just perched himself between the second and the third. If Cham loses this third base, you kind of were spot on. It's not the end of the world, but he needs to be able to have the lava available to pump out units. And look, he's just getting caught in a real rough place here.
He is just trying his best to win the game right here, right now. Lambo doesn't really have a transition planned behind this. Just even biling the larva, which is actually a really cute move, making it even more difficult for Cham to spend all that money. The drones are pulled away right now as well. The roaches from the third base of Cham try to also join the engagement, but that is exactly what Lambo is aiming for here. Corrosive Biles are super nice as well. Lambo is starting to break this. 21 drones have already gone down, and, well, there's even a lair coming up on the back of this right now too. If you could shut down the +1 missile, that would be fantastic. That's honestly the only thing that Cham has really got going for him here, but I think this game is pretty much over.
Yeah, I mean, these are really nice bios, just getting damage done here, there, and everywhere. Lambo's being super patient about this. 32 drones is what he went with, you know? He's up to a lair now behind all this. He's dealt the damage. That third base most likely to fall with the next set of biles as well. And Lambo, this was just nicely done by him, because I don't think he stood much chance. If Cham spotted this out, GG. Yeah, Lambo, kind of fortunate, it's got to be said, because if those Banelings connected their loco, I think Lambo would have been donezoed.
Yeah, imagine it wasn't 32 drones, but like 25, right? He basically would have had like a quarter less units here with this battle, and I don't think he really would have been able to even go for this attack in the first place. So Lambo ends up winning it, but I don't think he's all too happy about the game. We saw a weird transition, right? Like, he didn't go for a third base. He added on a quick third queen, I suppose, so that was kind of nice, but he skipped the Baneling nest. He made a couple of decisions in the early game that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, and then he got a bit lucky as well when those Banelings in the main base of his didn't deal more damage than they could have. So I don't think he feels all too happy, but you know what? A win is a win.
It certainly is. I remember back when I used to play competitive, when I played against Cham specifically, I used to find him quite tricky, you know, because he would play very blind, that a lot of my mind games wouldn't work because he wouldn't exactly know what I was doing, you know, but he'd have so many drones regardless of the situation that even if I dealt damage with my tricky thing, he'd have just kind of overcompensated by being greedy. And that's kind of what he did here, right? Like, he tried to go for that. Like, no matter what happened, he's going to be fine kind of thing. But Lambo went to a whole other level of how aggressive he was going to be. That +1 carapace, staying on the hatchery tech for so long. Didn't wait for roach speed or anything like that. Everything that he did, absolutely he had to do this game. It was very nicely done by him because he wasn't in the greatest spot here. That third from him was so damn late, and he wasn't able to keep it up for quite a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So Cham, he's got ways of scouting this, right? It's difficult to see all the units. He, obviously can't really get another Zergling in, maybe fly in an Overlord or something like that, but that's difficult to pull off. Usually what Zerg players at this level do is they scout the drone count at the third base. And he did so after all of those roaches were starting to move across the map. That's when he sort of caught the tail end of that army going across. And yeah, at that point, it's already a little too late. So I think if Cham decided to maybe go for that scout a little bit quicker, maybe halt like 10 drones earlier in the worker production, and then, well, start making roaches a bit sooner instead, he would have probably been okay. Because he had that +1 missile coming. He could have gone for some additional tech behind it too, maybe even roach speed. Yeah, both players making a few blunders here and there. In the end, it's Lambo who wins. But I think that game could have been a bit cleaner overall.
It's just one of those things, like if you're in Cham's shoes and you've got the speedlings on the map and your third's faster and all that, and you are droned up, let's say to a good like 45 drones, as long as you don't see any drones on that third from Lambo, you know he can't possibly be out mining you, especially with you having the nice spread over your 3 bases kind of thing. So seeing that and still just choosing to drone as hard as he did, definitely something that obviously bit him in the butt, but hopefully he can go forward and just be like, all right, that's something that I can't afford, especially in ZVZ. Like, this is one of the most cutthroat mirrors out there. But yeah, we're going to get into game 2 here. And remember, life is on the line for both of these players. Spawning over in the bottom right, as our red Zerg, it is Cham.
And his opponent here in the opposite corner of Babylon, we have Lambo. I wonder if maybe Cham assumed that he did blow up all of those drones inside of his opponent's main base. There's a chance that he looked away, right, after that engagement. He's like, okay, the banelings went in. The first one dealt a lot of damage. Probably the second one was right-click there too on the exact same thing. Something went a little off right there for Cham. That wouldn't really necessarily explain the amount of drones that he produced, but maybe he thought he was in a much better position than he actually was.
I mean, it could be, but my main question is, what was he looking at when the banelings were doing their thing? Because the first one looked like it was manually detonated, and then the second one, I don't know, and I'll probably forever question that one in my mind until my deathbed. Like, Cham, what was that second baneling doing? This is for like the most important tournament of the year, pretty much, kind of thing, right? But heck, these things happen. Cham just needs to be a little bit calmer with the gas on that drone pedal, and just because he knows he's against a really good player. And you know, we talked about this like in the opening of that game, things that Lambo's done in the past, where he's been on 2 bases, 32 drones, 33 drones, and it was exactly that, you know, like he's absolutely got that trigger finger available, and he's a scary player because he can also back it up with all the macro fundamentals. But this map, obviously a different one, short in rush distance, but it was a fun opening from Lambo. I don't always see that kind of stuff out of him, where it's like such a delayed third and whatnot.
Yeah, we do commonly see the +1 carapace push in Zerg versus Zerg, but usually you make the Evo chamber after the baneling nest. So you go for the standard opener, the standard triple hedge, then you go for the baneling nest, then you go for the Evo chamber at like 325 or so. If at that point you go for a carapace upgrade, you then go for some additional gases and make some roaches, lings, and banes, right? Then you push across the map. That's what we consider to be the standard +1 carapace push. Lambo in that previous game, though, like you said, he delayed the third base. He skipped the baneling nest. He delayed it so far until maybe this game. He once again is skipping link speed here too. The man is playing all sorts of tricks. He decides to go for a lair at 2.5 minutes into the game. What can this be?
This is cool. This is more like I thought Lambo would be doing if he was playing like a low drone style, because you've got the ramp. It's hard to scout up there. Like the map before, you obviously didn't have that ramp up into the base. It's a bit trickier to get units up to scout. But this one, you're far more safe. And Cham, so far, he's going for a third. He's going for quite a few lings as well, getting a nice early Evo. But Lambo, like when I've seen this kind of thing happen, it's so difficult in ZVZ because you scout up that ramp, but you have no idea what's coming because you can actually do pretty okay macro builds behind this. But there's a hell of a lot of different timings with these roach plays and whatnot that can really, really mess you up. And you see from the drone count right now, Lambo is actually just droning like a madman because he's so safe with that ramp. Oh, it's actually a full wall off it too.
He's even gonna double layer it over here, man. He does not want to go down to something silly like a Baneling bust. That being said, though, Cham has gone straight for an Evo chamber of his own, too. So he actually doesn't have a Baneling nest or anything along those lines. He can't go for a bust that Lambo is so concerned of here. Lambo is just droning, man. He is not really too concerned about all of this. Yeah, there's not much you can do against 3 queens. I mean, he can always create that second layer still. So Lambo starts up roaches right now. 3 gas, roach speed, +1 missile. This kind of looks like a Wings of Liberty build.
This is more... yeah, this is exactly... In fact, what was that map called? It had Dream in the title. It was like Dream something.
Dreamcatcher?
Yeah, Dreamcatcher. This was pulling out this build. I remember him eliminating people like Serral with it, and he was like really good at this kind of stuff. And if I know my Lambo, I was almost expecting these overlords to start making a little bit of a creep highway down the middle of the map, but yeah, he's going to have a lot of roaches very quickly, and the drone count, he's been rather healthy. He didn't need to over-drone either. He's only on 2 base economy kind of thing, but yeah, this is going to be quite scary for Cham to hold.
Yeah, so Cham at this point is thinking, okay, what could it be going for? There's a quick Overseer over there. Could it be a Nidus Worm? Maybe there's a Spire coming up. I need to worry about Mutalisks. Maybe it's going to be just a couple roaches here into a 3rd base. Well, it turns out it's none of that. It's the most basic of all the options that Lambo can go for. He's going to take a 3rd base on the back of this, but he's essentially forced to now go for an attack. Cham does see this coming for, well, quite a while now. So I think he's actually doing a really good job. He's gone up to, well, now he's adding on more drones. I'm a little concerned about that part. He really needs to push back the Zerg army first, but he's gone up to a decent amount of workers. At the very least, he's not over-droned just yet.
You know what's funny, though? Like, those drones, when I saw him making those, I also had the same thought as you, like, oh, why is he droning here? But if I'm looking at what's actually happening in the production tab with Lambo, he's also droning from this point. Like, he is absolutely trying to make Cham overreact at this point, which Cham... you know, and this is what I struggled with against him too. I would show him something and he would totally be like, you know, deadpan, stone cold killer. He was also like, yeah, I'm going to drone up a bit. And in this case, it was kind of the right call because these roaches haven't just darted across the map. And that's what actually makes Cham very difficult to go up against because these mind games that you're trying to throw at him, he has none of it, man.
Yeah, he's calling the bluff right now, for sure. So Lambo is pretending like this is a complete 2-base all-in. And Cham is like, nah, no, that's not the case, actually. I'm just going to go ahead and make some drones. And now Lambo also sees those workers popping out of the cocoons. This is essentially 3-base saturation right now for the Mexican Zerg. And, well, Lambo, okay, fine. You can throw that one out there, right? A little bit of contamination on the +2 upgrade. Fair enough. The one thing I really like here for Lambo is the +2/+1, right? So he's got double upgrades coming up right here against a single upgrade for Cham. But Cham is trying to leverage his way into a Spire.
Yeah, I think that Spire's pushing it maybe a little bit. We have seen some of the Korean Zergs like Solar really like to mix in those Spire plays and whatnot, and not even like go gung-ho, just like 6 or 7 mutas, get the Overlords out, get the map control, and then just go full-on Roach Ravager. But I like the fact that Lambo did contaminate that +2, because he went for this 2-base fakey timing into it's gonna be a 3-base timing here. You can see as soon as you start morphing in the Ravagers, that's it. That's when you start thinking about going. And that, if he hits a 2-1 against just 1-0 and going for the mutas, that would be a perfect anti-timing for Cham here.
Yeah, look at the supply count already. Cham really needs to figure out that this is massive roach production that he needs. He can make mutas. Mutas are not bad. It's weird, right? Like, roaches don't shoot up, obviously, so they're not particularly great against... roaches aren't particularly great against mutas, but with +1 carapace, these units from Lambo actually survive for quite a long while. It almost feels like sentries attacking a flying unit that just don't really deal a whole lot of damage. So these mutas are eventually going to be able to push this back, but Lambo might just be able to push for the victory right here. +1 is done. This is a very scary army for the player in blue.
Oh, it certainly is. I mean, that's so much Zerg. Even with the mutas out, the damage that Lambo's able to do here is pretty phenomenal. I mean, look at the supply here, Loco. He's diving on his own biles, which is a bit of an error, but there's so much Zerg to hunt down. He's still got roaches in the mineral lines as well. He's dealing a lot of damage. I mean, mutas will eventually clean this up, but that +1 carapace also helps quite a lot for these roaches and these ravagers against the mutas. And Cham, again, just... It felt like he had no idea this was coming, and he played so greedy behind it. I do like the emergency spore crawl or spine crawlers in the back of the base here, but man, he is getting caught out in this series.
Yeah, the spine crawlers are definitely nice, but I don't think this is really going to be good enough right here for Cham. Those mutas, man, they've been shooting the entire time, and look how much they've actually done. I feel like the roach army is just as big as when it first moved across the map. Some of those roaches, though, have been split off from the pack. They've been killing drones left, right, and center. Lambo, at this point, also going into the Hydra den, so even if eventually there is going to be a full-on retaliation right here for Cham, who is going to go for a counterattack, he should be okay against that one, too. Honestly, a really clever game right here from Lambo, right? Just trying to trick his opponent into 17 different builds. He even managed to trick us for a little bit, and, well, Cham didn't quite take that bait, but there's no denying that Lambo is just strategically an absolute mastermind in this series. Dealing so much damage, man. Can you really recover with only about 30 workers?
I don't think you can, you know, and he's against the absolute counter army to him. I mean, Lambo at this point, he's like, you know what? I've done a lot of damage. Let's get the spores up. We've got the Hydralis out already. We're feeling pretty damn good. I mean, even the queens with these kind of upgrades are pretty damn good against the mutas as well. And Cham, he's broke as a joke. He's going for some drones to kind of try and get back into it. But as long as Lambo doesn't die right here, right now, he's going to feel pretty good, man. And I mean, we can't forget that Cham's third died. Yes, he has a new third and stuff, but it just shows you that I don't really think he really knew what was going on again.
Okay, so the question is right now, what exactly is the follow-up from Lambo going to be? It can be kind of scary to push with just Roach Hydra and not without any spellcasters, because there's a very real opportunity that there's Banelings out there, and Banelings obviously are phenomenal against Hydras. I actually like this a lot right here for Lambo. He decides, you know what, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to give my opponent a lot of breathing room. One way to get these mutas out of my base is by going for a counterattack myself. There's actually a lot of overlords out on the map, so even just sniping those can be annoying, although Cham, I think he's got some to spare. He's actually all the way up to 200 supply. This might be a little early, though. I like this push right here for Lambo because it effectively deals with the Mutalisks too, but it could certainly be that he is actually catching himself off guard with that as well, because he doesn't really have that many units just yet. You never really know exactly how many drones this Cham added into the mix.
You don't, but if you're playing against Cham, all you know is he's going to be adding on drones, man. Like, that's what the man does. But here, I think this is the beginning of the end for him. Lambo doubling the supply of his opponent, moving in here. That is so much Zerg, and at every point in this series, Lambo just with a huge army and flooding in. Crazy stuff.
Very clever play right there from Lambo. Maybe getting a little bit lucky in game number 1, surviving by the skin of his teeth, but game number 2 was strategically very clever. Trying to sell one story and going for something else entirely. Opening up with that slower 2-base start, right? Which is kind of funny because when you're both making roaches, right? So you're making roaches, your opponent is making roaches too. If one player is on 3 bases and the other is on 2, you'd imagine that the guy that's on 3 bases eventually ends up with more stuff. But yeah, Cham wasn't entirely sure exactly what he's playing against. He was prepared for everything, but straight up Roach Ravager turned out to be the right call right there for Lambo, and well, he ended up with a much superior army.
Yeah, I think overall Lambo played pretty damn okay. Like obviously the first game he got himself into a bit of a pickle there, especially if those Banelings connected. But yeah, the second game I like what he was doing. He played good. The second game, he was just trying to make Cham's life really, really difficult. And he was playing, I think it's also, you got to remember, whoever won this series goes up against a Laser next. So Lambo showcasing like, yeah, I can do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. And just being hard to read. I think that also plays a part of what was happening in this series. And I like that kind of stuff for it.
No, you're definitely right. So next up, yeah, that's one of the questions, right? Whenever you know that you're going to be playing a Zerg in your next match, but also in the one that you potentially could be playing after that if you win, The winner of this series, so Lambo, is going up against Elaser in a qualifying match, a best of 5. I don't think that these are the strategies that Lambo will be playing against Elaser, because it just doesn't really make as much sense in my mind, right? Because these builds are a little bit funky. Obviously, Elaser is watching this too. He's like, okay, this is what Cham should have done differently. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lambo decides to play a completely different style in that series.
No, absolutely. Anyway, we'll get to hear what the analysts and Kalaris have to say at the desk. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I got way too eager, mate.
Why don't you just hear what Kalaris has to say, man? I get it. I get excited too whenever Kalaris gets on camera, but he's probably running on over in the studio right now. He's like, wait, I'm already on. No, we're looking at the replays first here.
Oh, my bad. I got carried away, you know. I just love hearing what James has to say about the games and whatnot and seeing what they thought. Because, yeah, it would be nice to hear what Pig thinks about these builds as well. Because, yeah, this first game, it was definitely weird from Lambo. Like, I haven't really seen a third be that late before without them really, you know, lining anything up with it. Like the no Baneling Nest, the no Roach Warren, just a late third. And then it was like, it all worked out pretty okay for him. But this second game, yeah, he seemed like the more well-rounded player, didn't he? And I mean, the fact that Cham was seeing things like those drones or the roaches and then just being like drone, that actually worked out for him. But then it was just like, he wasn't ready, was he? He wasn't.
No, this was a funny little game right here from Lambo for sure. I kind of like the fact that he went for a 2-base opener and then ended up going for a really conventional push. He wasn't really caught off guard so much against the mutas either, right? Like you could really see the strength right there of +1 armored roaches against unupgraded mutas. There were like 11 mutas up in the air there for, I don't know, like 3 minutes, and they killed maybe a dozen roaches in total. It really felt like they didn't do much.
Absolutely. Now is it time to throw to the desk?
Yes.
Yes, it is. I'm going to let you in on the secrets behind what maybe just occurred here in the Kalaris Dome. I genuinely thought it was a best of 5 in my head. So I was just still sat there waiting for the next game, being like, yep, I'm waiting. Oh, wait, no, it is actually over. So sorry to the boys over on the casters, but we've got ourselves Woody and Pig to talk about this one. Pig, pretty clean 2-0 coming out from Lambo here.
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned it before we went into the series, the pre-analysis segment. The reason I am so bright and shiny is I actually went for a chemical peel at the Lambo Clinic of Surprising Roach Timings, and it was a little more than I was expecting. They came out and just poured acid all over my face, and now, yeah, unfortunately, you're seeing what lies underneath. That was really good play. It was honestly just well hidden, disguised timing attacks, and you could tell Cham thought Lambo was going to be a bit more honorable, maybe, and wanted to go toe-to-toe with him in the macro game. But Cham is a greedy player. I mentioned before the series, you got to watch out, because if you let him get away with his greed, he will just swarm you in the mid game with overwhelming numbers. And Lambo was all about just selling the story of a normal game and then surprising him with a big attack.
Yeah, we had our suspicions going in whether or not the more well-known name on the truly international stage was going to be able to play it out well. And indeed he does, moving on against the Laser. What are your thoughts regarding the series?
Yeah, just solid all around. He controlled it. You know, and I think sometimes it's just what you got to do against Cham, right? Don't get surprised, be comfortable, and by controlling yourself, you take Cham's style away, and I think that's where Lambo's maybe a bit more experienced anyway. So, very cool series from him, and obviously just very convincing, which it needs to be, because up next is a Laser, and that's going to be obviously not easy. Yes. If you're kind of looking that good against Cham, you got to have a good confidence boost then going into the ZVZ against a Laser as well. Yeah,
as you guys mentioned before, it's a match that, in terms of Europe and the landscape of it and things like that, they're constantly kind of butting heads as to who is that number 3 when it comes to the pecking order of Zergs for the region as a whole. So any final thoughts, Pig, before we head on off?
Just that I like that there's a lot of trickery today. A lot of players doing surprising build orders. Game 2 especially there. Delaying the third hatchery on paper is inefficient, but it was all about the mind games in that second map. Just trying to bait Cham into a defensive mindset and hoping for the snipe on the third. Even though he didn't snipe the third, he was very cheeky with the Zerglings and then just followed up with the third base, the Rotec. And, you know, even though he was looking for more damage, there was always another timing attack behind it. Fake drones being transferred, blocking scouting information. Excellent excellent Zerg versus Zerg, but I imagine a laser might also be throwing some of that same fire straight back at him. So very keen to see what the evolution is in the next match.
Yeah, definitely, I think, closer matched in that best of 5. It'll be exciting to see that play out, and one of them guaranteed going to Gamers 8. All right, break time, and when we return, we are going to have a best of 3. Yes, correct, Kalaris. Don't you dare make a mistake again. It's going to be special going up against Astray here to find out who moves on into that qualification match. We'll see you in a few moments for more Gamers Without Borders.